This is Kenneth Wong, Senior Editor for DE, and this is part of our December 2021 DE Industry Leaders podcast series. Welcome. With so many manufacturers turning to simulation instead of physical testing, the volume of simulation data is increasing. So how would you archive it, manage it, and reuse it to keep your operation costs down? To explain that, we are talking about it with Marco from ESTECO. Marco, welcome. First of all, would you say hello to the audience and tell them who you are and what you do?
So thanks very much, Kenneth, for the invitation. I'm Marco Zucchetto, Volta Product Manager in ESTECO, which is a software company based in Italy.
All right. Marco, let's first talk about what we mean by simulation data. What are the kind of simulation data that manufacturers would and should archive? And are some companies doing it? Are companies doing it enough?
Yeah, sure. Very good question. So simulation data is all data that is related to the design phase of the product lifecycle. So it can be any type of file like a PowerPoint presentation or a PDF that, for instance, explains the project requirements. It could also be a CAD or CAE model. It could be also an experimental data set that documents all the steps taken to achieve certain results. And of course, the simulation data is also the results themselves. So simulation data is also made of reports and images that are stored to support decision-making and knowledge sharing in general. So in ESTECO, we know how important the storage and the traceability of data is, and that's why we designed our product, Volta, around guaranteeing storage of all kinds of simulation data, including also process automation workflows for generating simulation data and guaranteeing the ability to trace the history of this data and how it was generated and used.
Is it fairly common to reuse simulation data rather than run a new simulation? How would you explain, Marco, circumstances in which reusing actually serves you better than running a new simulation?
That's also a very good question. And this is something that I'm seeing more and more among our customers. So reusing simulation data is absolutely very, very common. So the reason is simple. It saves you time, which is the most precious asset that companies have today. So product complexity has increased over time. So we went from mechanical to mechatronic products to products that include systems that involve mechanics, software, controllers, and so on. So think about something we use every day, like the cars. So first, cars were purely mechanical. Then they included electronics and then the software and then advanced sensors like radars and lidars. So product complexity is skyrocketing. At the same time, the time to market is shrinking. So reusing data and shortening product development time is the key to stay ahead of the competition. Reuse is better every time you face the same problem or a similar one. So reusing simulation data doesn't only mean reusing the results. It also means reusing the methods, the models, and also the strategies. So for example, in our product Volta, we allow to efficiently reuse existing data and also the practices.
Let's think about it in a more specific terms. Let's say I have a pretty complex assembly that I've run simulation on, and now I want to see how that assembly will react to a slightly different temperature. Does it make sense for me to run a new simulation, or can I just reuse the old simulation but with a different temperature? And in doing so, would my runtime be shorter?
Okay, so I would say that basically you have two options. The first option is to reuse the existing model that you used for generating the previous data and change the temperature to see how the assembly reacts. So actually running a new simulation. On the other side, what you can do is you can use a data set or the simulation data that you have in order to train a response surface. So to use artificial intelligence to interpret the data and then give to you the performance of the system for a slightly different temperature.
Okay, now that we're talking about artificial intelligence, let's talk about it in greater details. I think the latest feature that is added to Volta is machine learning. What can you, or rather, what can the machine learn from the historical data of the archive simulation?
Okay, very good question. Also, artificial intelligence application is very broad among ESTECO products. So machine learning shortens the simulation time and efficiently reuses existing data. This is what we were talking before. So, when simulation data is available, you can reuse it to train response surfaces that can predict design behavior outside known configurations. That's the example that you were making a few seconds ago. So for instance, this is incredibly efficient when performing design space exploration studies. This kind of study explores many different configurations of the same product to select the best one that fulfills the requirements. So the application of machine learning enabled algorithms help to locate the optimum in a shorter time. So ESTECO's algorithms use existing data in an automatic way to push the solution towards the global optimum. So machine learning, in a sense, is the solution to reducing simulation turnaround time. So it minimizes solver runs and make a smarter use of computing resources and speeds up the whole simulation design process.
In Volta products, I think you offer both the option to save the data, archive the data on-premise, also in cloud systems. Of course, we're talking about, in some cases, I imagine each simulation run is generating gigabyte size of result data. So maybe in some cases, databases and the clouds are inevitable. Could you help us understand the differences between on-premise solution and cloud solutions, and what are the pros and cons for each?
Okay, so Volta is an SPDM solution, so simulation process and data management, and it deals with a huge amount of data. And so there are two options available in the market. So one is on-premise and the other one is the installation on the cloud. So the main difference between on-premise and the cloud solution is where the archival system is kept. So on-premise means a local installation on your company servers, and the cloud instead is hosted on the vendor's servers and accessed via the web. So historically, on-premise archival systems have been around for longer. So we can divide the pros and cons into three different categories. So the first one is the cost, and then the control you have over the data, and then the availability of the solution. So cost-wise, on-premises requires a high initial investment, which is in effect a capital expenditure. But the overall total cost of the ownership might be lower than the cloud. Then there's the control. Since your data is stored on your hardware, you have total control over it. But you also have the responsibility for maintenance, which includes also effective backup plans, storage, and disaster recovery. This can be a limitation, especially for smaller companies with a limited budget and technical resources. In terms of availability, an on-premise installation doesn't rely on internet connections to access the data. So in terms of cloud, I would say that the pros are bigger than the cons. And this is confirmed by the majority of the customers and vendors moving towards cloud technology. The adoption of the cloud does not need big upfront investments. It only needs operational expenditures. It's affordable with predictable costs, which is something the companies really like, to know what you're going to spend. So the cloud solution is scalable, since this means that it can handle the increase in demand, for instance, in storage if you need more. And this does not impact on-premise hardware, and everything can happen with limited intervention of the IT department.
I see. When it comes to this, I think one of the main questions that people often raise is security. So could you go through the pros and cons in terms of security implications for on-premise customer versus cloud customers?
Sure. On-premise, the customer IT has to take care of the security. But the advantage is that all the data is saved on local machines. So you have total control over it if nobody else can access those machines in case. So nobody else can access those machines for security reasons. On the other side, on the cloud, now the offer by the bigger vendors is really mature, and also security has very high levels. So we can also talk about the military levels security from the offers from the big players.
I see. Okay, very good. I think I've asked you all the questions that I have, Marco. Is there anything that is important about the trend of simulation data management that you'd like to bring up?
One of the most important things about simulation data management is not just saving the data, because that's just a technical requirement. It's extracting useful information out of it. So it means reusing efficiently the data that you have at hand. It means extracting the correct information out of the data, so correctly post-process the data that you have. And also, one of the most important features that our solution has is the collaboration. You must have the collaboration if you want to manage correctly the data and extract useful information out of it. Saving a model or saving just a simulation result without using it is pointless.
Very good. Marco, thank you very much for spending time with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Kenneth, for the invitation. And goodbye, everyone. And thanks for joining.
Very good. Until next time, I'm Kenneth Wong for DE 24/7, and we are out.